I spent a few years working as a corporate lawyer, but I was sneaking off to whatever shows I could in New York. I was trying to cut out early to go see theater, go see circus, or, whatever was around and in town. The show is not a remake of the movie. The show is a sort of repurposing of the music, and with a new story, a sort of big immersive element to it, and then adds in a whole bunch of really great circus. At its best, we all just like roll up our sleeves and get a whole lot of things done, and out comes something magical.
Welcome to the StageLync podcast, your access and connection to the live performing arts. In this podcast, you'll hear from some of the industry's most inspiring people from around the globe who create magic on stage and backstage. Our guests share their knowledge, passion, and the real stories of how a show comes together. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the StageLync podcast. My name is Kat Landry, and today we're talking with Jack Marsh. Jack Marsh began his circus career with Circus Flora in 1986 when he was just 2 years old. He rode a Clydesdale, also named Jack. Marsh has since served the company through his juggling, acrobatics, and creative energy. After working as a corporate attorney in New York, Marsh ran away to rejoin the circus, inspired to help Circus Flora create new and innovative productions. Marsh served as the executive producer of the New York City's Big Apple Circus from 2019 to 2022, and is the Circus Consultant on Come Alive, a live immersive production of The Greatest Showman in London, premiering later this year. Marsh holds a BA in economics from Harvard University and a JD from the University of Wisconsin. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
Absolutely. Now, Jack, it is clear from your bio that you have lived a very interesting life and that your story is perhaps anything but linear. So I'd love to start at the very beginning. What was it like growing up in the circus? Can I assume that your family were also circus artists?
Yeah, my mother has been involved in Circus Flora since the beginning of it. The company was founded in '86, so I was like 1.5, and she was a part of that. She had gone to theater school and learned to juggle there at NYU in New York under Hubby Burgess. So she learned to juggle and then began street performing with some friends and colleagues, and then they moved their street juggling act to San Francisco to become the Pickle Family Jugglers, which then became the Pickle Family Circus after that. And then she toured with them for a number of years after that. And then she always sort of had a 1 foot in circus and 1 foot in theater. And so I think that's what ultimately brought her back to circus later on when Circus Flora was starting. David Balding, the founder of Circus Flora, was a theater producer, but also a circus lover, also an animal lover. And he, his vision for Circus Flora was to create a theatrical circus, one that uses classic circus arts. And I should say he also had adopted an elephant named Flora from Botswana. So the idea was to create a circus with Flora as the star, but he always loved storytelling and theater. So he wanted to sort of marry these two art forms that he was so into. And I think that's what led him to ultimately find Cecil, my mom, and get her to come and join the show. So we toured with Circus Flora, throughout my childhood. I mean, it was never quite a year-round tour. We were never fully on the road. I always sort of had 1 foot back in quote unquote real life. I grew up in New York and went to public school and so on, but we would sort of jump away for a few weeks or a couple months at a time, or the show was then.
That's actually very unique from the circus performers that I've spoken with. So many of them, their entire lives were on tour. What was that like for you growing up to have 1 foot in quote unquote real life and one on tour with the circus?
It was great. I totally loved it and saw the sort of value in both and thought both were fun in different ways. And I liked school and enjoyed kind of that existence and playing sports with my friends and stuff. And then I also loved the backlot life of circus and those, that group of friends and the people that I was with there. So, I think I found them both and still kind of do find them both like equally enriching in very different ways. So yeah, I think to me, felt totally right.
That's so interesting. And then it's funny because you had an entirely different career as well. And it's funny because whenever we have circus performers on the show who grew up in the circus, I often like to ask them, if you hadn't grown up in the circus, what would you want to do? What would your life had looked like? What career path would you have followed? And you actually did do that. You kind of followed a totally different second dream. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went from circus performer to attorney?
Yeah. I mean, I would say growing up, I performed in Circus Flora. It was never a devotion of mine in a way that would have turned into a career later. Like I joke that I would never hire myself to do anything like as a, so I think it wasn't, I knew that I didn't want to grow up and be a professional circus performer. I also loved school and math and reading and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of, I knew I wanted to go to college, and I went to Harvard and of course wrote an admissions essay about growing up in the circus as one has to.
Naturally. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, so, I think that was the track I was on. I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. And then while there, I was less involved in Circus Flora and performing and, less a part of it. And I think I just sort of stayed on a more regular linear track post college, and thought law school was right for me, and thought being a lawyer was right for me for a while. And then I stopped thinking that.
Wow. So basically, you being a circus artist is very similar to many children who grew up playing soccer or doing gymnastics or having some other hobby outside school that they don't actually intend to do professionally, which to people like me, that sounds like a completely normal balance of activities. But to many circus artists, I imagine that's a little weird, right? Because so many of them just, they grow up in it and then they are in it forever. So it's very interesting to hear that. What was it that drew you to corporate law in particular? Just out of curiosity.
Paying off my student loans, I would say, was
the main. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think, I had accumulated enough debt in law school that the sort of easy path to becoming debt free is going the corporate route. In a different version of my universe, I might have, not carried that debt and not been drawn in by a big salary to get rid of it, and been able to, like, I don't know, be a defense attorney or something that's a little bit less lucrative. But I felt a strong desire to get out of debt, and so once I quickly did, I then was like, this isn't for me, and then took my, what's my current path.
Yeah. Hey, no shame in that. We do the same thing in corporate events and entertainment. So I'm curious though, was there a light bulb moment? Was there oh my gosh, I have to get back to something creative? Or did you kind of feel from the beginning like it maybe wasn't right? What brought you back?
I think right before I started working at my law firm, I had, post law school, had a little bit of time off before I started at my law firm. And Circus Flora had what turned out to be the first of a handful of collaborations with the St. Louis Symphony, like really wonderful world-class symphony, beautiful symphony hall in downtown St. Louis, like, ornate old vaudeville house, like just a sort of gorgeous place and a gorgeous partner to be with. And I got to, because I had the time and was happy to sort of, do it for free and get to work with my mother on it. I just helped in putting that show together, sort of acted as a, quasi producer, quasi assistant director, or whatever, just a let's help get this off the ground. And, it was a new collaboration, and it was something that sort of stretched us artistically. So there was plenty to do. But yeah, we did that and loved it, and, loved the kind of the end product of it, felt like it was a totally beautiful show, and, symphony music and circus pair so nicely together if well thought through. It was just really great. And I think I went from a Sunday afternoon performance of that, the last show of a weekend of shows, got on a plane, and then by like 8 a.m. the next morning was in a sort of law firm orientation. Like, here's how here's how to go to HR, and let's talk about securities law and all that. And I was just like, this is not the thing that I was just doing less than 24 hours ago. And I was so much more into that. So I think that probably dropped it in my mind for a while. And then, I spent a few years working as a corporate lawyer, but I was sneaking off to whatever shows I could in New York and trying, I was trying to cut out early to go see theater, go see circus, or, whatever was around and in town. I think I knew that was the big priority for me. And I was trying to sort of scheme my way back into that world.
So when you came back, when you made the return, was it first to Circus Flora and then to Big Apple Circus?
Yeah, I was to Circus Flora. David Balding, the founder of Circus Flora, he'd been getting older and was starting to think through what is Circus Flora after me. I think the board was having those conversations as well. It's a nonprofit, so we've got a board of directors. And yeah, I just was out for a visit once or twice and got to talking with David. And ultimately, he invited me to sort of come on underneath him as associate artistic director. I think that was 2013, maybe. Yeah, I spoke with him. He suggested I come on. We figured that out. He died quite suddenly the following year in 2014. Oh. So what had been planned on being a sort of a few years of collaborating, and then I would take it on. I was sort of more suddenly the artistic director and in charge of it.
That's a lot. So yeah, come on really suddenly.
Yeah. It was really sad. But yeah, so I've been artistic director of Circus Flora since 2014.
Oh, and sorry, so you are still currently working for Circus Flora as well? Oh, okay. That's I think what I didn't understand about the transition there is that actually you continue with them. That's awesome. So is it you were doing the Big Apple Circus at the same time?
Yeah, correct. I mean, Circus Flora is seasonal. So and Big Apple Circus is now as well. Circus Flora runs in June in St. Louis primarily. We do other shows and events as well, but that's the sort of core of the season. And Big Apple Circus was also sort of moving towards a seasonal winter in New York model. So yeah, it kind of made some sense, and the two companies look very similar. I mean, historically, they've looked very similar in that they both were nonprofits and had hospital clowning programs and, a sort of a part of the community that they were in. But even the shows themselves are, from at a high level, like very similar. Big top, 42-foot ring and, acrobats, horses, the works. So yeah, I think that was that was what made so much sense about that for me. It was these two companies are very similar, work at different times of the year, but there's a lot of ways to kind of bring them together and have them share concepts, artists, ideas, etc.
Yeah, wow, and you really keep yourself busy year round, which is great. Is there much difference between your roles at each of those organizations? Like one, you're an artistic director, and the other, you're an executive producer. Is that correct, or were?
Yeah, I was. I mean, Big Apple Circus was a bigger organization. Like Circus Flora is we keep it lean and mean. And I'm at the moment I'm executive director and artistic director, so sort of overseeing the kind of businessy side and the show side. Whereas I would say, I was more like a show producer at Big Apple Circus while I was there.
I see. Okay. And do you feel like your background, like perhaps that law degree you have, does that help with some of the businessy side, as you say?
I'm sure in some way. I don't think one needs a law degree to produce a circus.
Maybe not.
But it's training that sort of helps in the world and in a company and in business. It's a set of thoughts to have as in your head as you're proceeding through the world. That I'm sure I write some contracts for performers and all that, but we don't. It's not. We don't make it too complicated, at least in Circus Flora.
What would you say your biggest challenge is in the role of executive producer / artistic director?
I think the challenge is always like getting audience to come and to understand what it is that you're doing and why they should come and see a circus and what it should mean to them. I think that the modern circus audience is really interesting because they circus is so much in the ether. It's this, it's such a cultural touchstone. You say the word and it conjures, a zillion images of and some of them great and beautiful, and some of them less so. And I think it's really hard to convince a potential audience that the circus that you're putting on might be a little bit different than the very specific image that they have in their mind. So I think that's the sort of constant struggle, and everyone tackles it differently, whether it's putting it not in a tent or calling it circ instead of circus, or whatever choices people make to try to combat that fact, I guess is that much more challenging when you are putting a show up in a tent and it does have, I don't know, a flying trapeze act or what we know, the things that do kind of touch on those images. So yeah, I think that's that feels like the sort of more global struggle.
Do you feel like there's been any shift in pre and post pandemic audience attendance, desires?
I think it's hard to say because it's only felt like recently that attendance has started to be fully back to normal. I think 2024 at Circus Flora, attendance was good and strong, and energy was good. I didn't hear any sort of hesitations about COVID and all that. 2023 was also all right. I think maybe that during that year felt like sort of the first year post COVID. Prior to that, I think we were still just in the thick of it. I think 2022 we still kept the sidewalls of the tent open to make it a sort of open air kind of gazebo rather than a zipped up indoor space, quote unquote indoor space.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's I think we're now back to normal, which is great. And I think circus, from what I understand, it is doing well, especially compared to, and I know the theater universe is sort of struggling to come back, or has been. Circus has done better, or at least recovered more quickly, which I'm happy for. Yeah, and I guess that feels like a bit of a testament to just family entertainment. You just need a place to bring your kids. I've got a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I'm well of the need to sort of just program events and outings and doing stuff with them. So Absolutely. I think we benefit from that. It's there's always going to be that need for family entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of family entertainment, so you are working on a pretty cool project in London. It's called Come Alive, and it's based on The Greatest Showman. Is that correct?
Yeah. Come Alive, The Greatest Showman Circus Spectacular.
That's so cool. Can you tell us about this project?
Yeah. It's really wonderful. It's up now. It's been I think we opened in mid-October, so it's sort of off to the races. It's set to all of the music from The Greatest Showman, which anyone involved in circus knows that music all too well, I'm sure. And most people in the world at this point do also.
Yeah, definitely.
So it takes that music and repurposes it into a different, the show is not a remake of the movie. The show is a sort of repurposing of the music, and with a new story, a sort of big immersive element to it, and then adds in a whole bunch of really great circus. So it's more a big. I think Circus Spectacular is, sounds bombastic, but is a really apt picture of it. That's all. It's very true. It's big. The circus is great. There's a troupe of great dancers, 5 incredible singers. It sort of takes a lot of the London West End musical theater talent, singers, dancers, pairs it with circus artists, both UK based and from the rest of the world, and sort of mashes it together into this really big, wonderful show that's paired with these great songs. And, I think it's really gratifying for me because the fact of these songs and what an audience they have. I think especially in the UK, I guess the film and the soundtrack did as well in the UK as anywhere in the world, means that people are going to show up for that. And, what this show delivers on is giving them something of really high quality. Like it doesn't sort of rest on its laurels of just having the IP for these songs. It takes that and then, makes something that's really big and fun and great.
That sounds amazing. So how did you come to be involved in this?
Through the director, Simon Hammerstein is the director of it. And I've not known Simon for all that long, but I've known one of his partners, Randy Weiner, I worked with at Big Apple Circus a handful of years ago. He sort of brought me on to that role. And they're partners in The Box, the nightclub in London and New York. When they were going to produce this show, they gave me a call and talked it through, and I came on board earlier this year.
That's great. And what is actually your role?
Good question. I'm the circus consultant. Circus consultant, which I don't think doesn't totally have a job description, but I for the early stages of development of the show, which was earlier this year, I came on board. I came in for a set of meetings with the kind of full creative team to start with not a blank piece of paper, but start from the small beginnings and start to kind of dream up what it might become. And I sort of gave both the through my background in kind of knowing the circus universe and the history of it, and what might work, what might not work. Trying to sort of forecast into the future what the circus element might become, and say, I don't know, what if this piece included this type of apparatus, or those sorts of kind of laying that in, and then from there kind of seeing it through casting, through further development, helping kind of doing my part in sort of helping to shape the show, and then being out there for the kind of the rehearsals and tech and the early previews.
That's great. And is this something that you will return to, or is it something that you delivered and now you kind of say, have fun?
I think at this moment, I'm not on it day to day. I mean, I'm sort of tracking what's going on with it, and happy to help as needed. But it's now a machine, hopefully a well or a reasonably well oiled one. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's future to the project. I mean, I think it's something that is the soundtrack and the movie are kind of a worldwide phenomenon, and there's I think room in the world for more big, great circus shows. So hopefully there'll be a future in mounting other productions of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure down maybe new artists will need to come on and so on. So I'll probably be involved in some capacity there. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of surprising that it's only just now being made, because it is kind of handcrafted for that, right? It's the perfect story to tell, or at least the perfect music to use.
Yeah, my understanding, I think there's also a sort of more straightforward, that's probably the wrong word, but more straightforward adaptation of the movie on its way as well.
Okay.
Sort of West End Broadway show that's coming that probably will track the storyline from the movie and tell this sort of the same version of the story, hopefully with some good circus in it as well. But I imagine it being a bit less of a focus than just because the movie had some nice circus moments in it also, but I wouldn't say that was the front and center part of it.
Right. Whereas Come Alive is pure circus, right?
Yeah. It's a circus show with some other, with a lot of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it's that one of its core tenets is that it is very immersive. Can you share with us what about it makes it so immersive?
Yeah, well, so the space, I should have mentioned it before, but it's not in a theater nor a vinyl tent. It's I think best description is it's kind of this airplane hangar of a space in Earl's Court. So it's this really big sort of gigantic space that was basically empty when I first stepped foot in it. Then we've built this through massive trussing and so on, a sort of fake big top within it, a 700 seat big top theater that looks like a tent, has the sort of same drape and feels like you're in a tent, and then surrounding it, but still interior to the airplane hangar. There's a whole immersive world that you enter. So there's food and drink, obviously, but also theatrical caravans, a backstage sort of makeup and dressing room, other sort of small tents for fortune telling and little, sort of sideshow looking tents. There's a whole world that you enter for the kind of hour that, I think people are encouraged to show up early to experience this, because there's other performance, all of the dancers, the circus performers, everyone is has tracks that kind of run them through the immersive part of the show. And then it filters into the big top to become a more of a sit down performance. Yeah, the immersive bit is really nicely done, and I think adds so much to it. And it's so I think it's such a dream to be backstage, the kind of world that I grew up knowing and that a lot of circus people know of like the backlot of a traditional circus is a really magical place. Like it's, everyone's living together kind of on top of each other. You're with your family, you're a part of this wonderful kind of machine of a circus. But, it's, so I think I've always had a hunch, and I think, I've seen it in various ways, but trying to theatricalize that backstage environment is really great, and doing it, with some authenticity and kind of knowing what is special and magical about it, and then getting to share that with the audience. It's really fun.
That is so cool. Okay, now I'm kind of dying to see this. Is this a permanent run, or does it have an end? Or
tickets are on sale through March at the moment. It's already been extended once. I hope it'll keep getting extended, but I think right now, should get there before end of March.
Yeah, I was going to say, can it keep getting extended until I can make it back to London? That sounds amazing. I love that. I mean, I think you and I both know the magic of backstage and backlot and like the circus family thing, which of course is also so important to the story of Greatest Showman. So that's really amazing. I'm excited to see more immersive productions coming to be. It sounds somewhat similar to the kind of pre-show tracks that they have going at the Cabaret in London right now. I don't know if you happen to catch that, but it's a similar kind of concept, and it's really like it makes a world of difference to just how steeped you are in the world that you're about to hear the story of. So I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always through Circus Flora, which sort of marries storytelling and circus, and it's a very different show than Come Alive is. But I think that concept of it's obviously like circus is great in its own right, and seeing people do incredible things or beautifully artistic things is wonderful. But I think you can accentuate that by finding a way for audience to better know the people as humans that you're seeing incredible things, and so there's different ways to do that, but I think immersive is a really powerful tool for that, because you're, the guy who you just had a conversation with before the show, or he steamrolled past you, or you saw him in an argument with his partner or his lover or whatever. Like, you being able to know that person in that way, and then be like, wait a minute, that's the guy I'm now seeing do a triple backflip on the board or whatever they're doing. So I love, finding those ways to sort of better humanize performers and circus artists.
Oh, absolutely. It's so cool. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Tickets on sale through March. So make your way to London. That's awesome. So Jack, at the end of our podcast, we always ask the same two questions. The first one I'm going to ask you is, what is your favorite thing about your job or the industry as a whole?
I think probably my job and the industry as a whole is I just love the people in it, which is maybe too broad, but I think more the spirit of those people. My wife works she sort of does a similar thing to me. She's a producer in TV and film world, and I like, I think her world's great, but I really love that there's a bit of a Wild West feel to the circus universe. I think there's, rather than sort of, there's not the same level of agents and managers, and I think there's so much more of a, hey, let's all just figure this out spirit, and we sort of all, from directors, designers, circus artists, crew, at its best, we all just like roll up our sleeves and get a whole lot of things done, and out comes something magical. And I love that feeling of sort of everyone giving it their all and making a magical show as a result.
That's awesome. I think we all can agree about that. And then the final question that we ask is, if you could change one thing about your job or about the industry as a whole, what would it be?
I think probably going back to what I was describing before about the sort of audience expectations of or like cultural imagery of circus. It would be nice if there was more of a blank slate that people were starting with in coming and seeing any given show. Like obviously that's an impossible fantasy land, but just, being able to like you would with a play that you don't know anything about, I think you wouldn't carry any expectations or associations, positive or negative. You just sort of go in and like see what it is and what it does to you. It would be very nice if we could do that.
I imagine so. Well, thank you so much, Jack. It was great to have you on the podcast. And maybe I'll make it to see you come alive at some point.
Please do. Or St. Louis in June for Circus Flora.
Yes, absolutely. I do love St. Louis, actually. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the StageLync podcast. StageLync is an online platform that gives you access and connection to the live performing arts. As a guest, you can read about live performing arts from across the globe and gain insights from performers and artists on stage and all the amazing people who work behind the curtain. If you are an industry professional, StageLync Pro offers jobs, networks, and career support tools, and you can build your own professional profile on the site. As a StageLync podcast listener, you are eligible for 20% off your StageLync Pro membership. Visit us at stagelync.com, and when joining, use the code SLPodcast. StageLync, that's StagelYNC.com.